In this video, we're going to talk about managing users in your WordPress website. Now, there's two parts to this. The first is managing your own WordPress admin user, as there's a couple things that we want to do to make our site a little bit more secure. And I also want to talk to you about editor roles and the other roles that come along with WordPress. The second part of that is if you're going to have users registering and using your website, how you can manage their information or add new users manually. So the first thing I want to show you is users themselves. So hover over the users menu and click either on the users or click on all users, and it's going to show you a list of all users in your system. Similar to other pieces of content, we have the title or name, username of the user. Then if they've entered in their actual name, that will show up under the name column. We have their email address listed, and we have their role. So in order to explain a little bit more about roles, I'm going to click on the Add New button, and this is how we can manually add in a new user. So the first thing that's required when we're adding in a new user is a username. Now this is required. Also keep in mind that it can't be changed later. You can't change the username even if we can go in and edit other information about a user. The next thing is email address. This is required and it can be changed, but it must be unique. There can't be two users with the same email address. And the reason for that is if a user forgets their password, they can use an automatic system to get a new password or a link to create a new password emailed to them. So each user has to have a unique specific email address. The next fields are not required, and that is the first name and the last name of the user. They can optionally put in their website, and then they can create a password. If you're adding a new user yourself through this interface, you can click on Show Password. It's automatically going to generate a password for you. If you check this box, it's going to send them their username and password to their email address. So if you're adding several users and you don't want to contact them individually, this is a nice way to let them know what their access information is. And then you choose their role. So I have a bunch of roles here, but some of these are from WordPress when I installed the discussion forum. The main roles for WordPress are starting here at subscriber. Now, a subscriber is just a reader of your website. They can read your blog posts, and they have access, if you've set this up in the settings, to maybe post comments or view kind of information on your website. But it's the basic user role, and they really have no permissions in your system. The second role is contributor. The contributor role is somebody who can create content for your website, but all of that content has to be approved or managed by an editor or administrator before it can be live on the website. So they have very limited access. They can create content, but it will be saved as a draft or pending review until somebody with a higher role approves it, such as an administrator or an editor. Then we have an author, and this is similar to contributor, except they don't necessarily need to have their content approved. They can publish their own content. They can also edit and delete their own content, and they can manage comments that are left by users on their specific content. The next role is editor, and this is kind of the content manager for your website. Now, the one thing I do recommend, and I know that this can be kind of a pain, but it is helping us be a little bit more secure. When we're creating blog posts for our website, I do recommend that you create an editor role for yourself. Now, you're going to need a second email address for this, but this role would be the user that you would create all of your blog content with. And the reason for that is that some places in WordPress it shows the author of your content, and if you hover over that link you can see what the actual username of the user is. So in a second I'm going to show you how to mask your administrator name so it's displayed differently than what you would log in with. But by hovering over that link, we can still find out the username of the administrator if you're posting content with your administrator account. And by using that and by trying a bunch of different programs with bots or scripts, it's a way that hackers might be able to try to brute force their way into your website. So one thing that I do recommend is to use an administrator account for managing your website and doing all of your work, and using an editor account to manage all of the post and page content on your website. Now that's up to you. It can be a little bit of a pain to have two different accounts with two different email addresses, but I guarantee you it will be worth it. But if you were going to have a second person have that editor role and they were going to manage your content or manage content from your authors and contributors, this is the account. They can manage all of the content within a website, almost to the level of an administrator without having access to anything else, any of the other controls of your website, such as plugins and stuff like that. So it's content-specific access. And the final role is administrator, and this is an account that just has total control over everything in your system. So those are the different roles that we can add in our website. Now, if you're a marketing website for a business or you're doing some other kind of functionality, you're probably not going to have a lot of contributors or authors. Hopefully you'll have an editor account, which is the account that you use to manage your content, and an administrator account, and the most of your users are going to be this subscriber account, which is basically just a registered user on your website. So if we go back to all users, we can see that the only account currently is my administrator account. And I just want to show you what I was talking about. And this is to mask what your actual login name is. Because, right, for my administrator account on this website, and I can show you this because I'm going to delete this site in a moment, but this is the name that I log in with. So when I create a blog post, for example, when I created our sample post, you can see, let me just show you here, if I go into my post, you can see that it shows the blog author. And even if I do what I'm about to show you, it'll still be there. So if I didn't want my admin username to be shown on the front end, I can change my nickname to be something like, you know, Super Admin Dan. And then under display name publicly as, I can change this to, instead of my login username, to Super Admin Dan. So I'll still use this to log in with, but on the front end, this is what people are going to see. So if I update my profile and I refresh my page, you can see that now for the author, it shows Super Admin Dan. But if I hover over this, and you can't see this on the video, but you know, in the status bar at the bottom of your browser, if I hover over that, the link shows my actual username. And that's why we want to prevent creating blog posts with our admin account if we can. Now, the truth is, with a complex password, even if they have the username, it's probably not going to help them that much, but why help them out even a little bit by giving them the username? So that's one way to kind of mask publicly what your login username is, by creating a nickname. If I put in my first and last name, I can also have my combinations of my first and last name be displayed instead of my username. But in general, this is also the user edit screen. Once a user is in your system, you can edit all of their information with the exception of their username, which you can see is grayed out. Everything else I can update. I can generate a new password. I can log people out, etc., whatever I needed to do. And so that is our user system. We can add new users. We can give them certain roles depending on what access we want to our site. And if we have registration open in our settings, they can create their own account, and we would set up the default role that they would become. Most times, 99 times out of 100, that's going to be the subscriber role, which is our basic registered user role. So that's everything you need to know about users for right now. Make sure that you either create an editor account for yourself, or at the very least go in and edit your own profile and make sure that you change that display name publicly as, so it's showing something other than your username. So that's it for users. Go on and check the last video in our instructional series to learn about the different settings that WordPress has. And then the final video in this series will show you the initial steps we should take every time we set up a website.